Hello, friends. Welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. We begin our video with a funny story about our OP's neighbor. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Sir, you need to replace your siding. This happened to a friend of my dad's about 3 decades ago. This friend lived in a nicer area of town, and it had a neighborhood association. The association had a set of rules to keep every house looking nice. This friend was contacted by the association because his siding needed to be replaced. In fairness, you couldn't even tell what color it was supposed to be. Since replacing siding is an annoying job, he asked for the order in writing and looked over the rules. Apparently, as long as you make a consistent effort, there's no timeline. In fact, you're only in violation of the rules if you stop working on it for an entire year. So every summer, he proceeded to put up a single piece of siding. He was still doing it 8 years later when my dad moved away. Diabolical. Yeah, I'm working on it. And our second story. I got revenge on my ex-girlfriend for cheating on me. This happened years ago when I was around 18 and dating a girl I'd gone to high school with. We'd been together for about a year. Towards the last month of our relationship, things started to die out. We wouldn't talk as much, and she never had time for me. She claimed she was always working at her family's grocery store. Her family had their own business for years. It was a small grocery store that at one point, while I was in between jobs, I even worked at for a short time. Her family were lovely, and me and her father got along great and still chat every now and then because I was always working or studying, didn't party, and had set goals for myself early in life, which her father thought was awesome. So anyway, back to our relationship. Because we both worked, we only had the weekends free, so usually we'd do our best to spend time with each other, but she'd grown distant and I hadn't thought anything of it. But one weekend I receive a call from a friend of mine who tells me she'd seen my girlfriend out with another guy. I didn't want to believe it. I was devastated, but I thought before I threw any accusations, I'd get my own proof first. It took me almost 3 weeks to convince her to spend time with me. When she agreed and came over for a night after work, I planned on confronting her to find out for myself. She arrived shortly after dark and told me she was going to have a shower. She went into the bathroom but had left her phone with her bag and keys on the table. So I did what anyone who was being told they were being cheated on would do. I went through to see for myself. And what do you know? She was cheating on me with her ex-boyfriend, who was a dirtbag. You see, he was one of the kids at school that messed around, never came to school, was out smoking and drinking instead. I never really interacted with him outside of being asked for a lighter for a cigarette, but he was also selling some crap at school. Not cool at all, bro. I found out she'd been going to see him on the weekends to drink as well as sleeping with him. There were messages talking about how I was too nice or focused on work too much, how she's only with me because her family loves me, and I can handle that if you tell me that, not cheat on me because of it. I'd rather leave a relationship freely. This hit me really hard and messed with my perception of women afterwards. I'd never been cheated on before and didn't know how to handle that feeling. But I wasn't going to let her do me like that. Here comes the sweet revenge. You see, in those messages, they'd been talking about needing money for alcohol or cigs and not having enough. This conversation led to him convincing her to steal it from her family business. She'd been getting away with almost $800 or so every weekend, as well as stealing items from their shop. So I thought fast, screenshot all the messages, and sent them to her father from her phone. I told him it was from me and that this is what I'd found in his daughter's phone. Shortly after she'd finished up in the shower, I told her we were finished, and I knew everything. I told her to leave, and I had a surprise for her when she got home, which she was confused about. She left after that, and I received a call from her dad, who apologized to me for his daughter's actions and sounded almost as devastated as I was. He told me he'd already called the police and they were waiting for her to get back home as well as collecting her ex-boyfriend as an accomplice. I was shocked, but thankful that I'd cut dead weight from my life in just fashion, considering she cheated on me. She got to spend the night in a cell with her ex and was ordered to pay back the amount by a judge and given community service. He, on the other hand, happened to have previous warrants, and I don't know what happened to him after. I wiped my hands clean of her and moved forward. But man, that felt so much better that she at least got some punishment as a result. And our next story. Boss fails to make me stay a week longer after quitting. One of my previous managers could be very immature sometimes, but always kept frustration and any subsequent retaliation pretty well hidden. He was a passive-aggressive pro and had some quirks. He would often have long gab sessions with two coworkers in particular, just a weird political alliance, friendship type thing, and use them as office spies. In exchange, they got to keep their jobs, which they were unqualified for, relatively speaking, and some other social perks. I've seen him blow up in meetings over nothing, child, and there were several times he made my job harder out of pettiness simply because he didn't like me. I think mostly because I was focused on my work, and while cordial, was not a butt kisser. Even after I would gently try to ask if anything was wrong, and also proffer assistance in areas outside my duties, odd assignments, staying late, etc. After nearly a decade of abuse at this company, I decided I needed to make a change and leave. Despite the hard times there, I truly loved my job and was actually very sad to go. Trying to depart as maturely and professionally as possible, I put in my best work until the very end. I stayed later, had 100% of my ends tied, gave over a 2-week notice, and prepared an extensive turnover of all my work, which included some complex projects that were still in the process of being defined, i.e. some nebulous crap. I told him I wanted to vacation out for the last week with the company and that while I wouldn't be available in person, I'd be happy to converse via phone and email any support they needed during that time to help with the projects I'd be leaving behind. I planned on taking some time off before starting my new job to have a medical procedure and get some recovery time. He initially had no issues with this, but a week before I'm scheduled to leave, he calls me in and proceeds to somewhat matter-of-factly, yet ever so slightly with a tinge of hasty nervousness, explained that HR was no longer allowing vacationing out because of some legal concerns. I think people were getting contacted too often on their vacation days, effectively defeating the purpose. Okay, that's fair. Then he smoothly segues into his real message, which is he's not going to approve my vacation, so I'll need to stay an extra week. In his mind, I had no other choice. What? LOL. Fortunately, I have some experience in these situations, and while my little brain was having a party inside, my face and body remained relaxed and focused on eating my oatmeal while he spoke. I don't think he was nervous about confronting me with this information, but rather he finally realized how much complex work I was actually doing. He could no longer minimize it per usual, and how technically unequipped the favored portion of his staff was. For a brief second, I actually felt a little bad for him. However, I quickly moved past that and replied, I can't stay because I have something important scheduled and would simply need to leave a week earlier. It was of zero consequence to me, since the unused vacation would be paid out to me anyways. I was pretty surprised and admittedly somewhat pleased at his reaction of genuine surprise. He did not expect me to say that, I guess. He's not dumb, so I'm not sure how he didn't see that one coming. Maybe he was just very used to how committed I was and expected me to give the usual, okay. Not a major victory, but definitely satisfying knowing how slammed they were going to be in the weeks to come. In the end, they rejected my good faith efforts to help while I got paid more from unused vacation, got more time off, and left for a job that paid me $5,000 more than the meager raise I'd asked them in order to stay. Validation. To this day, he refuses to return requests for reference for me. Hasn't hurt me, though, so joke's still on him. And our last story. Above taking good advice from your employees? That might not work out well. This is my story from 5 years ago. I've changed the names of all parties involved out of respect for their privacy. At the time, I was employed in a mid-sized supermarket which was owned and operated by a retail giant. I was a baker. It was my responsibility to produce the fresh loaves of bread and butter rolls which would only be on sale for that day until closing time. Any surplus goods would be counted, recorded, and disposed of. Having been employed by them for 10 years, I got to know what sold well and what didn't. Our range included some artisanal, ethnic, and specialty breads that weren't overly popular with customers. Day after day, I'd be ordered by the production sheet, put together by the department's manager, definitely a Karen, to produce an inordinate number of these products which would inevitably end up in the bin. I took it upon myself to mention to Karen that this was an issue which would reflect poorly on the department. Although the company made most of its money back with what it wasted, it meant that we were investing our time in making loaves that weren't selling, rather than dedicating those hours to more profitable product lines. Karen, of course, was having none of it. "I'm the department manager. I think I know what's popular and what isn't. Just do your job," she said with obvious scorn. Fast forward a couple of weeks later, and our store is due an audit. Before I go further, there's two things to note. At the time, there was a lot of material on mainstream TV and online exposing supermarket waste. Every production sheet is stored in the bakery as a record of production levels and is kept for a minimum duration. On it, the baker of the day annotates how many of each product he/she makes in an effort to prove that the sheet was followed. So our store was due an audit, and the bakery was to be that audit's focus. A severe-looking group of people come by the bakery, scouring it for problems and non-compliance. They asked to see both the sales records and the production sheets to confirm the variance between production and sales. Of course, the numbers on several product lines aren't ideal, and Karen is questioned about the money being lost in unpopular and therefore waste food. Karen doesn't explain her position well, so they gather the team and question us, asking for complete honesty. They got to me and asked, as the person producing the majority of the saleable items, whether I'd noticed that there were products not selling well. I sweetly reply, "Yes, but I was just doing my job." Karen ends up getting demoted from bakery manager and left soon after. I was asked if I fancied the gig, and I said yes. When you say disposed of, I hope you mean workers taking some loaves home. Going straight into the bin is such a waste. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.